Have you ever felt close to someone, yet strangely alone at the same time? Have you ever wondered why the connection feels strong one day, then cold and distant the next, without any warning? If you have felt this confusion deep in your chest, stay with this till the end, because by the end of this video, you will finally understand what has been happening to you, and that clarity alone can change how you see love forever. At first, everything feels right. The attention feels warm, the conversations feel easy, you feel chosen, you feel seen. There is laughter, curiosity, and a sense of promise hanging in the air. And just when your heart starts relaxing, something shifts. The messages slow down, the tone changes, the emotional closeness fades. Nothing is said, yet everything feels different. And that silence begins to speak louder than words ever could. Your mind starts working overtime. You replay conversations. You analyze every message. You question every pause. You ask yourself what you did wrong. Maybe you talked too much. Maybe you cared too deeply. Maybe you expected too soon. Slowly, without realizing it, you turn the blame inward. This is how the pattern begins. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, inside your thoughts. What makes this so powerful is the inconsistency. Human psychology is wired to chase what feels uncertain. When affection becomes unpredictable, the brain becomes alert. Hope rises during moments of closeness. Anxiety rises during moments of distance. That emotional roller coaster keeps you attached, even when it hurts. You are not weak for feeling this. You are human. Your nervous system is responding exactly as it was designed to. You feel the bond, yet you never feel secure. You feel connected, yet you never feel settled. You feel wanted, yet never fully chosen. That contradiction creates emotional confusion, and confusion keeps you stuck. You wait for clarity that never comes. You hold on to potential instead of reality. You stay because you remember how good it felt at the beginning. The hardest part is that nothing is clearly wrong on the surface. There is no big argument, no dramatic goodbye, no clear rejection. Just distance, just withdrawal, just emotional absence wrapped in politeness or silence. And because there is no clear ending, your heart keeps hoping for a return. You sense that something is off, but you cannot name it. Your intuition whispers, yet your mind argues back. You feel the emotional gap, but you try to bridge it alone. You give more, you explain more, you wait more. And slowly, you begin adjusting yourself to keep the connection alive. That is where the real damage begins. Psychologically, when love feels unstable, the brain seeks safety by control. You try to predict moods. You try to avoid triggers. You try to become easier, quieter, more understanding. Not because you want less, but because you fear losing what little connection you have. This is not love growing. This is self-abandonment disguised as patience. You tell yourself to be strong. You tell yourself not to overthink. You tell yourself that everyone needs space. And while those thoughts sound mature, they slowly silence your real emotional needs. Your heart learns to wait. Your mind learns to doubt. Your soul learns to tolerate emptiness. Deep inside, you feel it. Love should not feel like this. Love should not feel like guessing. Love should not feel like proving your worth. Love should not make you anxious when things go quiet. Yet you stay, because the moments of closeness feel so real, and when they are present, everything feels okay again, until they disappear. This cycle creates emotional attachment, not emotional safety, and the human mind often confuses the two. Attachment feels intense, safety feels calm. When you grow used to emotional highs and lows, calm can start to feel boring, and chaos can start to feel familiar. That is how unhealthy patterns become normalized. If you have felt drained without understanding why, This is not random. If you have felt emotionally tired after every interaction, this is not coincidence. If you have felt like you are always waiting for the other person to fully arrive, this is not imagination. Your body feels what your mind is trying to ignore. This first step is awareness, not judgment, not blame, awareness. Because once you see the pattern clearly, it loses its power over you, and that awareness is the beginning of emotional freedom. Stay until the end of this video, because what comes next will help you understand why this pattern exists, how it forms, and most importantly, how to protect your heart without closing it. Once awareness settles in, a deeper question naturally rises. Why does this pattern exist at all? Why does someone move closer, then suddenly step back the moment the bond starts feeling real? Understanding this is not about labeling anyone. It is about seeing the inner mechanism that drives the behavior, so confusion no longer controls you. At the core of this pattern is fear, not absence of emotion. Some people learn early in life that closeness comes with pressure, that depending on someone means losing freedom, that needing others leads to disappointment. Over time, the mind builds a shield. Distance becomes comfort. Independence becomes identity. Emotional self-reliance feels safer than vulnerability. When connection stays light, everything feels manageable. There is space to breathe. There is control. There are no expectations weighing on the chest. But the moment emotional depth appears, something inside tightens. The nervous system reacts before logic has a chance to speak. The body reads closeness as danger, not because love is bad, but because it feels unfamiliar. This response is automatic. It is learned, not chosen. When attachment grows, internal alarms turn on. The mind searches for escape, not because the person in front is wrong, but because intimacy feels overwhelming. Pulling back restores a sense of power. Silence restores emotional balance. Distance creates relief. Psychologically, this is a protection strategy. The brain believes it is preventing pain. It believes it is avoiding loss. It believes it is maintaining control. Unfortunately, what it protects against is also what it secretly wants. Connection becomes both the desire and the threat. This is why signals feel mixed. Affection shows up when things feel safe. Withdrawal appears when feelings grow stronger. The pattern repeats because it temporarily works. Space reduces inner stress. Avoidance calms the system. Until closeness returns again, and the cycle resets. This behavior is not driven by logic. It is driven by conditioning. The emotional system learned that relying on others leads to discomfort. So it chooses distance, even when the heart feels something real. This internal conflict creates inconsistency, not because feelings disappear, but because fear speaks louder than desire. From the outside, it looks confusing. From the inside, it feels necessary. The mind convinces itself that pulling away is maturity, that silence is strength, that needing less means being strong. But in reality, it is an attempt to stay emotionally untouched. When expectations rise, tension follows. When closeness increases, resistance appears. When vulnerability is required, avoidance activates. This is why emotional conversations feel heavy. This is why clarity feels uncomfortable. This is why commitment feels suffocating instead of grounding. The human brain is wired to avoid pain before it seeks pleasure. So if closeness once hurt, even years ago, the body remembers. It reacts before the conscious mind understands. This reaction is fast. It is quiet. It often looks like emotional detachment. This is not about lack of care. It is about lack of emotional safety inside. When someone does not feel safe within themselves, sharing space with another feels risky. They retreat not to hurt, but to survive emotionally. Understanding this shifts your perspective. You stop personalizing the distance. You stop seeing it as your failure. You realize you are not dealing with indecision, but with fear-based behavior. And fear cannot be fixed by love alone. No amount of patience can rewire someone else's nervous system. No amount of understanding can remove patterns formed over years. Change only happens when awareness meets willingness. And willingness cannot be forced. This realization is powerful. It pulls you out of self-blame. It grounds you in reality. You begin to see that effort does not always lead to connection. Sometimes, effort only deepens imbalance. When one person moves closer and the other pulls away, the distance grows silently. Not because either is wrong, but because their emotional systems are speaking different languages. Recognizing this truth is not about giving up. It is about choosing clarity over confusion. It allows you to stop chasing answers that never come. It allows you to stop shrinking yourself to make space feel comfortable for someone else. This understanding is not meant to harden you. It is meant to protect you. Because once you see what drives the behavior, you stop expecting consistency where fear controls connection. And that awareness prepares you for the most important shift of all, the shift back to yourself. Once that truth becomes clear, attention naturally turns inward. Not to analyze the other person, but to notice what this dynamic has been doing to you over time. Because even when behavior has an explanation, the impact it leaves behind is real, and it deserves to be acknowledged. Slowly, your inner world begins to change. You become more alert than relaxed. Your thoughts circle instead of resting. You start reading between lines that were never spoken. Every pause feels loaded. Every delay feels personal. Your mind stays busy, searching for reassurance that rarely arrives. This kind of emotional environment trains the brain to stay on guard. Instead of feeling calm, you feel watchful. Instead of feeling secure, you feel prepared for loss. Your body does not know when closeness will disappear again, so it stays tense, even during good moments. That tension becomes familiar, and familiarity can be mistaken for connection. Over time, you begin adjusting without noticing. You hesitate before expressing needs. You soften your words to avoid discomfort. You delay honesty to keep peace. Not because your needs vanished, but because you learned they might push someone further away. So you carry them quietly. Your sense of worth begins to depend on responses. A message lifts your mood. Silence lowers it. Attention becomes relief. Distance becomes doubt. This is how emotional dependency quietly forms, not through weakness, but through hope mixed with uncertainty. Psychologically, the mind seeks balance. When something feels unstable, it tries harder to stabilize it. You invest more energy, you stay longer, you give chances beyond reason. The effort feels like loyalty, but inside, it costs you peace. You may notice yourself thinking less about what you want and more about what will keep things smooth. Your standards become flexible. Your boundaries blur. You tell yourself that understanding is love. But love should not require self-erasure. This pattern slowly shifts how you see yourself. You question your value. You wonder if you are too emotional, too attached, too much. Yet the truth is simpler. You are responding to emotional inconsistency, and the human mind struggles to stay grounded in unstable environments. When affection feels conditional, the brain works harder to earn it. You try to be easier to keep, more patient, more accommodating. But effort does not create emotional safety. It only deepens exhaustion when reciprocity is missing. The hardest part is that you still care, and caring makes you generous with excuses. You explain away behavior. You minimize your own discomfort. You wait for improvement that feels just close enough to believe in. Hope becomes the glue that holds the imbalance together. Emotionally, this creates a quiet loss. Not the loss of a person, but the loss of ease. The loss of feeling chosen without effort. The loss of being yourself without fear. And because nothing officially ends, that loss has no closure. Your body keeps score. Sleep feels lighter. Joy feels interrupted. Moments of calm feel temporary. Even when nothing is wrong, your system expects something to go wrong. That constant readiness drains energy you could be using to grow. You may begin doubting your instincts. You silence that inner voice that says something feels off. You tell yourself to be grateful for what exists, instead of honest about what is missing. This inner conflict creates emotional fatigue. Love should expand you. It should create room for expression, not shrink you into silence. It should bring steadiness, not emotional suspense. When connection requires constant adjustment, it stops being nourishing. Recognizing this impact is not about blame. It is about self-respect. It is about acknowledging that your feelings matter, even when someone else struggles to show up consistently. You are allowed to want clarity. You are allowed to want reliability. You are allowed to want peace. This awareness marks a turning point. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's availability. You stop negotiating with your own needs. You begin remembering who you were before emotional uncertainty became normal. This moment is quiet, but powerful, because when you finally see how much you have been carrying, you realize something important. You deserve a connection that feels steady, not one that keeps your heart waiting. That realization opens a new door, not outward, but inward. A quiet shift begins, where strength replaces waiting and choice replaces endurance. This is the moment where attention returns to what truly matters, your inner stability. Power does not arrive loudly. It shows up as calm, as clarity, as the decision to stop explaining your pain to someone who cannot hold it. You begin understanding that peace is not something to earn, it is something to choose. The first sign of this shift is emotional grounding. You stop reacting to every change in behavior. You stop reading meaning into silence. You stop letting uncertainty decide your mood. Instead, you observe. You breathe. You stay rooted in yourself. Psychologically, this is regulation. Your nervous system learns that safety does not come from another person's presence. It comes from your own steadiness. When you no longer depend on external reassurance, emotional balance returns. You begin setting quiet limits, not with ultimatums, not with anger, but with self-awareness. You recognize what drains you and what restores you. You choose distance from patterns that disturb your inner order. This is where self-respect becomes action. You stop chasing emotional availability. You stop initiating from emptiness. You stop offering energy where it is not met, not as punishment, but as protection. You realize that consistency is not too much to ask for. It is the foundation of emotional health. Reliability is not pressure. It is reassurance. And reassurance is a basic human need. At this stage, your standards sharpen, not because you became cold, but because you became clear. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You no longer mistake attention for devotion. You look for presence that stays, not moments that vanish. Your self-talk changes. Instead of asking why you are not enough, you ask whether the situation is aligned with who you are becoming. That question alone restores dignity. You stop trying to be understood by someone who avoids understanding themselves. You stop shrinking to fit emotional limits that are not yours. You begin expanding back into your full self. Emotionally healthy love does not require strategy. It does not require guessing. It does not require holding back truth to keep someone close. It flows with clarity and steadiness. And once you taste that kind of peace within yourself, anything less feels obvious. This shift does not mean cutting off feelings. It means placing them in the right hands. You learn that care without safety leads to burnout, and affection without consistency leads to confusion. As you reconnect with your inner balance, attraction changes. You are no longer pulled toward emotional distance. You are drawn to stability. Your body relaxes around reliability. Your mind softens around honesty. You begin noticing how calm feels unfamiliar at first. That is because chaos once felt normal. But calm is where healing lives, and healing is where clarity grows. You stop proving your worth. You stop auditioning for love. You start living from a place of quiet confidence. Not loud, not defensive, just grounded. This is not about walking away from people. It is about walking toward yourself, toward alignment, toward peace that does not depend on anyone else's readiness. You realize that someone else's fear does not define your value. Someone else's limitations do not measure your capacity for love. You can care deeply and still choose what is healthy. The moment you stop chasing emotional certainty outside, you create it inside. That inner certainty becomes magnetic, not because you demand connection, but because you no longer beg for it. This is emotional freedom, not detachment, not bitterness, freedom. And from this place, everything changes. You no longer settle for half presence. You no longer accept confusion as normal. You trust yourself enough to wait for what feels steady, mutual, and real. Because love that is meant for you will not require you to disappear to keep it.